everyone. We are delighted to have you all here with us today, joining us on this very interesting webinar in where we will discuss Prepare for 2022 and learn the 5 ways of reducing costs with business continuity. My name is Rita Regepi, the Portfolio Marketing Manager for Continuity Resilience and Service Management. Please stay tuned for the next 16 minutes and learn what will the role of the Business Continuity Manager look like in 2022? How will business continuity help you reduce costs? What are the threats and what incidents should you be preparing for? And what planning do you need to do to face this in the future? The speaker of this webinar is Charlie Maclean-Bristol. He established the successful business continuity practice Plan B Consulting in 2007. He has a Ph.D. in Emergency Planning and Disaster Management and is currently conducting a Ph.D. researching Business Continuity and Crisis Management. He was awarded for Business Continuity Manager of the Year, highly commended, in 2016. At the end of the presentation, we would love to hear from you. That's why we highly encourage you to submit any question or comment you may have during this webinar in the chat box of your control panel. Thank you for your attention. Enjoy the webinar, and I hope you will get insightful information. Please, Charlie, you may start the webinar.
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I hope I'm going to stay up to my billing of being very interesting, so it'll be absolutely up to you at the end of the webinar to go and see whether that's true or not. So, right, let's go on to the next slide. Charlie Maclean-Bristol, as you can see, of course, this is probably my favorite slide here. So, yes, just fellow of the Business Continuity Institute. My own background is I was in the Army for 5 years, and you can see the picture of me on a beach. You always have to show pictures in the Army. You have to show pictures on the beach. I worked for Anglian Water doing emergency planning, Scottish Power doing business continuity, and then I formed Plan B Consulting about 10 years ago, and I've gone from one of me on the kitchen table to we now have 9 consultants there, and done the odd award. Not quite got a PhD yet. I've done a couple of years, but I think I'm going to have to suspend it for a while because, unfortunately, I find there's too much business continuity to be done. So, so I'm getting there slowly with my PhD. Anyway, just very quickly, Plan B Consulting. You can see what we do. We do all things business continuity, so we specialize in pure business continuity, so we don't do information security or 27001 or risk management or that. So we're a specialist business continuity consultancy, and mainly in the UK, but we've operate on the worldwide. So next week I'm off to Oman doing some business continuity out there. So we get about a bit about. Right, our agenda today now. I'm hoping my audience, I've been told my audience is going to be a roughly sort of business continuity people, probably of different levels of experience. So that's who I've aimed my my talk at. So there will be bits hopefully for the experienced people as well as those of you who are starting, and hopefully if you're very new to business continuity, hopefully there's some useful stuff in there for you. I'm not going to spend very long on business continuity, but what is business continuity? And then I think for us practitioners there, I'm going to briefly go through whether business continuity is a cost or a saving. But what I want to focus in really on the talk is the Business Continuity Manager in 2022, and what does that sort of actually mean to you as people who are either managing business continuity or have an interest in how is that going to affect you. So that's my final bit. What does it mean to you? I've got here a definition. I'm sure as business continuity people you are aware of what it is. as I say, it's capable of the organisation to accept to continue level of products and services acceptable predefined levels. And what of a lot of the work we're doing and you're doing is what are those predefined levels, how quickly do we need to recover different parts of our organisation, and that's a bit about the art and skill of business continuity there. But we're also doing some incident management there, we're doing some risk management, we're trying to mitigate our risks in advance, so we're doing a number of things out there, but I'm sure you're all familiar with that definition. One of the interesting bits from this talk was, you know, can you save money with business continuity? And I was slightly umming and ahhing about this to see whether actually you can or you cannot save money with business continuity, because is it a bit like insurance, when you know you pay your insurance every year, but if you don't have any claims, then basically it's a cost. So you know, when we sell business continuity to people, are we saying there's a saving to be had there? Not normally. Just say, well, you implement business continuity and there'll be a cost because you haven't done it before and you're required to pay for it, so there's an ongoing cost there. But I thought to cover the bit of the talk of the 5 savings, thought I'd just have a quick go through where perhaps we can make some savings, or at least make some business improvements which hopefully will make some savings to your organization. So we're going to briefly go through them now. I think the first thing we can say is we can reduce the risk. Now, I've come across 2 or 3 organizations in the last couple of years which, when I say to them, you know, where's your data center? And they say, oh yes, in the back, it's the back behind this office here, and it's all nicely locked up. And I said, what happens if you lose your data center? And they go, well, we never really thought that that might happen. We never really thought about it. So and I said, well, how long would it take you to recover? And actually, once we work through this, it would take them weeks, if not months, because they would have to go and find a new data center to do recovery. They'd have to go and get their tapes. They would have to then go and buy the hardware to run your systems up on, your applications up on. You would then need to find the original set of software. You would then need to configure out that for whichever the latest configuration you're working on, and then you've got to go and try and recover your tapes. Now, you probably do it quicker than a few weeks, but it would take weeks. So for many organizations, if you lose your IT for 3 or 4 weeks, you might be pretty much dead in the water, or your reputation and the impacts are pretty huge on there. So one of the savings, as kind of you're a practitioner, you know, is that we can reduce risk. And I think even if we reduce large amounts of risk, so we're saying to them, well, actually, you need to have a spare data center, you need to think about how you're going to recover your data center loss, then that can improve your day-to-day running, because maybe you've got some changes you want to make to your system. You can switch over to your spare data center, you can run it up, you can maybe use your spare data center as a sandbox for trying to new systems. Then actually you've got some opportunities there, even for minor events, is you're actually mitigating the risk. So you're not just covering off the huge big events, you're covering off the small events, which can make some sort of savings and can have events not having as bigger impact there. So we're going to reduce risk. I think the next thing is about detecting incidents sooner. One of the things I probably don't go around telling people this, especially when I first engage with them, is to say, you put in business continuity, you will have more incidents than you ever had before you had in business continuity. And that's not because, you know, they're going to be that much or accident prone, but it is all about that you will recognize incidents or the potential for incidents quicker, so that you kind of say, actually, this could develop into a crisis or could develop an incident. Let's get the team together to think about it. So if the crisis or incident really happens, we are ready for it, and we will be able to deal with the incident. So I think what that other saving is, and if you can detect it early, you can do something, you can maybe stop that incident getting worse, so that actually there you are, you're getting some sort of savings on there, because you may be stopping incidents getting a bigger impact. And then, you know, we talk around this, around, I call it a creeping crisis, or some would call it slow burn incident. And these are the sort of incidents, probably some of the most dangerous ones, because if we have a big fire, like you can see in my slide there, then it's kind of obvious you've got a major incident. But if you've got your IT breaks down, an engineer comes and then they can't fix it, so they send for another engineer and another piece and then another engineer and another bit from somewhere else, that time keeps on rolling on. And if you knew it was going to take 24 hours to fix your systems, you would have done something about it. But because somebody's always just about to solve the problem, then you don't do anything about it, and you find yourself into a major incident before you've really thought about it. So we detect incidents sooner. This bit about the front foot incident manager, we need to be, in incident management, we need to be proactive. If we're seen to be always reactive, then we're always seen to be on the back foot, we're being buffeted by the incident, and, you know, in terms of media, in terms of reputation, we're not looking good. We're not looking like we're managing the incident. We just look like we're kind of don't really have a clue what we're doing. So if we can identify the incident early and actually say, right, we've got an incident here, we're dealing with it, we're going to get it sorted in the next 24 hours, then that gives assurance to our customers, our stakeholders, that we ought to, you know, we know what we're doing, we're on top of the incident. And I was just thinking about the cost of incidents there, and you know, Yahoo, what was it, a couple of weeks, last month declared that they had lost all these sort of millions of account details through a hack several years ago. They've just had to reduce their price by something like £350 million in a takeover. So if you think that hack has almost cost them £350 million, that's a lot of money to actually lose to an incident. Maybe they come out earlier, maybe they haven't had it in the first place, but if they come out earlier, can be maybe proactive, and they hadn't waited for a couple of years, then that would actually be a lot more, we would have a lot more maybe sympathy for them, but a lot more kind of felt that they're kind of not a slightly chaotic organization. So saving 3. Saving 4, you can see customer regulatory requirements. There is more and more push from customers, regulators. I know within the UK, big push from regulators here to get business continuity, and a lot more testing and checking, and not just saying, oh yeah, you've got a plan, tell me you've got a plan, we'll tick the box there. They're asking for exercise results. And so there is and we're also getting a lot of work from people who said, my customer says I must have business continuity help, I don't want to lose that customer, what do we do? So we help them in that bit. So there's that push there, and you can see, you know, if you don't have these things in place, you can see the regulatory fines, and regulators are having more and more teeth and more fines on people, and finding larger sums. So business continuity helps keep those fines away. And my last bit there is a bit like about executive stress. And I was thinking, if you go on holiday and you left your back door open, you would fret throughout the entire holiday to say, well, what happened if a burglar came in and got, because I left my house open? Now the chances of it happening is pretty small, but once you start knowing as an executive, we've got a major problem here because we haven't got a spare data center, and if it burns down tomorrow, we're going to, could lose our whole company, I could lose my livelihood, then that puts a lot of emphasis on executives to do something, and they're going to worry about that too until the problem is sorted. So if we can try and stop our executives getting stressed, we need to get on with our business continuity. So as we know, there's not a huge business continuity is not a way of saving money, but I think not per se, but I think there are savings and business improvements will come on as part of the business continuity process, especially in reducing risks. And once we get embedded, I think there can be some savings and some efficiencies to be made on the back of business continuity. So let me move on to the business continuity role and the business continuity manager role. And my little diagrams, the next three diagrams, this came from an essay I wrote in about 5 years ago, which was the Business Continuity Manager in 2017, and I'm now looking at the Business Continuity Manager in 2022, and I think one of the points here is, first of all, this is a progression, so some of us might be still back at 2012, and maybe some of us are towards the 2022 because our organization has matured. So it's almost sometimes not almost like something around the day and age we're at, but it's almost something about a level of maturity. You know, organizations which have been doing business continuity, especially some of the banks have been doing it for 10 years, are fairly well embedded, mature organizations. So they're more at the sort of 2022, but we see a lot of organizations still at the 2012 version. So I think hopefully once we have a look at this, you'll see yourself somewhere on that spectrum, but not necessarily just because you're more of the 2012 version doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're not at a state of maturity that other people have been doing it longer. This is interesting work that also ties in around the BCI's 2020 work. So that stuff's available on their website. And that's very much around about where is the business continuity profession going, and you know, what are we trying to achieve there. So let's take you on a journey. This is what I thought the business continuity manager was 5 years ago, or sort of this is the business continuity manager, say, to 1 to 3 years. And so we've got business continuity life cycle. Again, the business continuity life cycle there, so they're probably maybe starting, been around once or twice. We've got immature organizations, so it's not really embedded. People are not really sure what it is, or they haven't really got a lot of experience. So we've got to develop our BIA, we've got to develop our plans. We may not necessarily large complex exercises, but basically the organization waits for the business continuity manager to run the exercises because they haven't really got the capability, or sometimes I think it's the confidence to run their own exercises. So it's a little bit, business continuity manager, when are you coming to run my exercise for me? So, and you know, sometimes if you're going to wait for a year for an exercise, it better be a large complex one rather than you know, a 2-hour desktop, because you kind of feel like you have to give them their money's worth. This is the only exercises we're doing, so it better be a good one. And also the business continuity manager is the expert in the company, so they are the font of all knowledge, and really nobody else has very much knowledge at all. And a lot of their work is going to be training, embedding, and trying to get all the other business continuity coordinators, maybe their sponsor, up to speed so that you can start embedding the organization. So we've got there very much the business continuity manager is the doer. They're doing it or they're helping the other people do it. But a lot of the stuff is having to be done by themselves because they really don't have the support from everybody else round about it because they don't have the knowledge to do it. So that is all sort of 5 years ago or the early stage. This was my vision of the business continuity manager today, which I think that's reasonable. I'll come on to the next one, and I think, you know, a little bit the business continuity manager is sort of heading towards my vision of 2022. So basically, the idea here is the business continuity manager needs to change into advisor, so that actually they're not doing it because the business continuity skills have been embedded in the business. Now this could be either because, you know, you've been around the life cycle 5 or 6 times, so people have learned the skills. Secondly, I think, and this is more and more finding, that there are more business continuity skills, non-professional skills out there because people have been doing it in various organizations. So if you employ someone from a bank, you know, they quite often will come to say, well, yeah, I used to do business continuity there, so I understand what it is. You know, I'm not a full-time professional, but I'm a coordinator and I can update my plan and I understand what a BIA is for. I understand what a plan is for, so I'm kind of I understand what we're doing. So that's the role is turning into more advisor, and that is one of my points from my essay was we probably need less business continuity people now because they're not doing, they're advising. So they're auditing plans and BIAs. So they're checking that you've updated your plan, your BIA, but they're not required to do it because the organization people, their coordinators are doing it. So they're making sure those plans are up to date. They're doing the continuous improvement, so they're checking that the exercise results are followed up. They're checking up the incidents are recorded, the incidents, lessons learned are done. So they're trying to make sure that we're getting better and business continuity is not sort of slipping backwards, because as we all know, if you neglect it, business continuity for a couple of years, very, very quickly you're left with such out-of-date stuff that you may as well start again. So we're also pushing down the exercise requirements into the organization. So people are now doing their own desktop exercises. They might do a big exercise, but they're really doing the, you know, the letting the businesses do the exercise, and they're getting a lot more exercises because each business unit has to do their own exercise, so we're getting more exercises. They're writing the policy, they're doing the compliance, so they're checking up on people, changing the policy as they mature, and facilitating the whole thing. Life cycle plus is what is, once you've gone around the life cycle 5 or 6 times, as a sort of business manager, you have to, you can get quite bored. So what you're trying to do is then put some more specialist training in there. So it's like training your administration people on your teams. It may be logist training. It may be specialist incident management training. It's basically building up the level of skills beyond your kind of basic life cycle there. So we're adding bells, we're adding whistles, we're adding skills, we're adding knowledge, we're adding methodologies, we're taking things from the emergency services, we're taking things from what we see on the web, the latest ideas, and say, yeah, that'd be really great, let's incorporate that within our plan because we need to refresh it. So that's the sort of life cycle bit, and maybe a lot of the external training is being done, either the businesses are buying it in themselves or they the coordinators are doing it themselves because they have skills to do it. So one of the dangers for me is as business continuity managers, if, you know, in the BC manager in this model 5 years ago, you require quite a lot of person power to do it, coming into this level, we're now starting to say, well, we can do one or two business continuity managers in very large organizations because they're just sort of a little bit hand on the tiller, putting it in the right direction. They're not steering the whole boat and rigging the sails and everything else. So they're, you know, it requires not so many people and maybe different skills as well. And then if we look forward, I want to leave the cross-discipline resilience because I kind of come on to that thing. I think more and more, and I've been quite anti in the past, maybe because we've become a reseller of it, but business continuity software in terms of, I think the quality of business continuity is improved by, and secondly, the administration is made a lot easier by using business continuity software. So, and I think speaking to the vendors, I've spoken to lots of different vendors, the sales of business continuity software is going up because I think a lot of organizations in cost savings, not producing paper monsters of all this paperwork. So more and more people are either using bespoke software, but you know, business continuity professional software, or software used for like quality documents or quality management systems, or even down to sort of SharePoint type systems. But more and more people are using software in some way to manage it, and I think that is going to be, we're going to see a lot more of that. Business continuity software market has matured, so if I went to a BCI show, World Symposium, World Conference, you know, about 6 or 7 years ago, there was tons of software vendors. Now that sort of market has matured and there's sort of 3 or 4 largish ones dominating, say the UK market, maybe a bit more the world market, but I think a lot of people who thought they were going to make lots of money off selling software didn't find the initial traction. But those who have survived, I think, are doing reasonably well. So I think we're going to see much more software out there. I think the other interesting bit is there's going to be limited work area recovery in DR. You can see now more and more places where I was just working with a Scottish government organisation, and I talk about buildings are burning down and say we're not bothered. All our staff were doing agile working, they've all got laptops, and actually they come into a different desk every day and they're encouraged not even to come into the same desk, right? The building burned down, they lose their stuff in the locker, but they can work from home, they can work anywhere, and their whole workforce is designed around not one location. So I think more and more we're going to see that as more and more people can work from home, work from different locations. Of course, there'll always be call centers and maybe trading people who need specialist work area recovery, but I think the days of very heavy duty plans and where we're all going to recover and coming back in waves are going to be less required, because we can almost, our RTOs are going to be very short, because in terms of loss of buildings, you know, everyone can go home and work. So even those who might have a 2 or 3 week or a 1 month RTO, in a loss of building scenario, they're going to be up and going with the time it takes them to get home, not going to be sent home for 4 weeks until we can find some location from them. And I think that's very much the same with disaster recovery. Again, pretty sophisticated organizations are busy putting their stuff in the cloud, they're putting in data centers, very high degree of resilience there, although you did notice that Amazon went down, so a whole load of data centers and people who use Amazon data centers were having problems yesterday. But so IT will not be recovering from tape and rebuilding stuff. It will be instantly on or switch over, or you will not need to do so much DR recovery. So this long tail of, you know, these are systems we go back within 24 hours, 48 hours, and 3 weeks is going to be less, even under catastrophic, even loss of a whole data center. So I think, you know, is not going to change everything, and some people take a while to get it, but I think disaster recovery and recovery point objectives are going to become less relevant to us all. I think there's always a very big role, and I think I've always said this is missing from the BCI life cycle, is there is a bigger role for incident crisis management. So if we have a disaster, we're going to have to manage it. And we need to teach people how to manage disasters, whether that's the crisis communications the managing the social media, the looking after your customers, the recovery, and whether that incident can be adverse weather, or whether it's a cyber breach or a data loss. We need to manage those interfaces to recover our organization, to manage those interfaces with our customers and our stakeholders. And if we don't manage them quickly, there could be massive impacts on our reputation. So I think more and more front will have incident crisis management for a multitude of different events, not perhaps, next coming on to the resilience piece, not just in business continuity, but touching into IT, touching into maybe health and safety, touching into a large amount of different cross professions or cross disciplines, but we are still going to need, we're going to use those crisis management skills for a multitude of different events. I think again, you know, the BC managers are going to be a lot of facilitators. They're going to make sure that all the bits and pieces of business continuity are kept up to date. They might, I think they will also, even if we go down the resilience road, I think they will still need to have business continuity expertise to manage the business continuity within the organization. So even if they take in a larger resilience role, I think there still needs to be some BC skills for new business bits, for new people, for training, for new acquisitions, for changes in threats. You still need those BC skills. So I think the BC skills are not going to be done away with, or those skills need to be somewhere, and I think they need to be, they could be bought in from elsewhere, but I think they need to be embedded at a reasonable degree within the organization. Now the other thing which those of you who get my bulletins, I'm always quite pushing, is this idea of the BC manager as doing the organization's horizon scanning, because there needs to be someone in this organization who is looking to the future. Which are the new threats, whether that's a hurricane coming in, or whether I was speaking to a colleague in Romania and they had the protests outside just a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying, well, have you got the BC team together? And he says, well, I haven't really thought about it. He said, well, look, you know, if you have protests out there, maybe people want to go out to join the protest, maybe they want to sort of camp outside, maybe you can't get into your office, so you should be getting the BC team together to think about, is there anything we need to do? If there's nothing we need to do, fine, but someone needs to be taking that role and say, look, I know that Hurricane X is brewing out of the Atlantic, it's 3 days away, but we need to start thinking about that. Someone needs to trigger that, and it needs to be someone's job. And I think if all else fails, that should be the business continuity managers. So they're looking out to new threats, to new things that we haven't dealt with, those sort of black swans that could suddenly come out there, or the black swans would happen to somebody else, maybe at the other side of the world. So we ought to be looking out for those things and doing her horizon scanning, and I think that's an important role of the business continuity manager, is taking up that role if nobody else is doing it. And I think that brings me to the last bit here, is the cross-disciplinary resilience, and this is the big debate in the sort of business continuity world. And you can see that I was looking at job titles in banks, and you can see that the two places that adopt this sort of resilience job title are banks and a lot of, especially in Scotland, in the sort of local authority emergency planning. And so this thing of resilience is coming here, and I think there's a big debate within the sort of business continuity world is how we are to address that, because it, you know, the BCI is pretty clear. It is not the same as business continuity. Business continuity is one of the parts of resilience. I always think it's almost like, though I don't play golf, it's like one of the golf clubs in your bag. It's one of the things you play if you have a business continuity incident. So we got here some definitions of resilience, but it's all about producing the toughness of your business. And I think it's a little bit like risk, in fact, that it's holistic beyond just threats that can come and get you, but it's actually also, and this is where there's quite a lot of debate about, is it also about business? So actually resilience, is it about relying on too much on one customer? Is it resilience about relying on too much on one supply chain? Is it resilience by running our cash flow pretty hot and actually, you know, if we lose lose a reasonable amount of money, we could go bankrupt? Is it about actually resilience of going into 3 or 4 markets rather than one market, because if the oil price goes down, you know, our whole business raison d'etre goes, and then, you know, we can lose our whole business. So it's a debate about whether it can be part of business as well as kind of external threats that can come in. So those are a few definitions there. What the idea of this resilience role is that there's a whole load of resilience type activities there, and how is there any person whose role it is to look across those and get them to work together. Because as we all know, you know, the cyber people don't talk to the business continuity people. I've missed out on business continuity there. I was just busy trying to do it just before I did this. I suddenly, I've forgotten business continuity. But a lot of these people are dealing with sort of similar type events, so they're basically mitigating risks. And this whole sort of piece is really about risk mitigation. So it's first of all identifying the risk, and then it is mitigating, whether it's from a health and safety point or a supply chain or physical security. But at the moment we're having nobody who is actually looking over this. So taking a view across, you know, even the risk people are quite often, they're really looking at the risk identification, but they're not really and they might put some mitigation in there, but they're not really doing the management of it. So they might check the mitigations happening, but they're not actively involved in that, and they're not, say, pulling together the incident management. So if we have a health and safety incident, 2 people are killed, that has to be managed proactively as an incident, in the same way as physical security. Someone breaks in and steals half of our, you know, steals all our vehicles or all our, you know, all our PCs, and we've got, you know, nothing to work on. So this resilience piece has to come all together. And what the BCI is pushing to do is for people from the business continuity profession, because we know the business very well. And I always say that the business continuity manager ought to know their own business better than anybody else, because they ought to know what are all the different processes and have the exposure to what the guys and girls on the front line are doing. They need to understand that. They also need to understand right up to the top of the organization where the chief executive and them lot are going as well. So, and they also, because you've done your BIA, you understand what's important, what the risks are. So you're in an ideal place to maybe to take in some of those organizations and to have a sort of holistic view across them all and try and pull them together to try and, you know, produce a resilience piece altogether. So that's what the BCI is suggesting, that business continuity managers can take advantage of these skills and this knowledge to try and pull that all together. Now, I've yet to see a chief resilience officer yet, but I'm sure sooner or later there will be one. And I think there is business or organizations are busy seeing that a lot of these things have similar synergies, and actually if they weren't siloed and pulled together, there'd actually be some business benefit for that. So that's the resilience piece. So whether business continuity managers, you ought to be looking at actually taking on this role and getting beyond your straight business continuity silo, then that's what the BCI and the sort of 2020 vision is thinking you ought to do. Because as we know fine well, these threats, these are the threats from this year, but these threats are going to change, and we need to, as business continuity people, sort of change with those and understand the threats. So that's a little bit about the business continuity manager. That covers off the sort of 2022. So really, in conclusion, you're probably all saying, Charlie, well, so what? I think there's a couple of things there. Is for ourselves, it might be an opportunity, either within our own organization, is to recreate the business continuity role and try and take on a wider role. Could be difficult in some organizations, because if you've got a health and safety manager and a cyber manager and a procurement manager, may not take kindly and say, well, I'd rather like you guys to come and work for me now, because I'm going to call myself the resilience manager. So there's going to be some internal politics around about that. But I think there is an opportunity, if you are ambitious and you say, well, I've done around the business continuity life cycle 10 times and I'm really I've taken it about as far as I want to go, there is this opportunity to recreate yourself either within the organization or to recreate yourself as a professional resilience officer. You might need to wait for some of those jobs to come up, but and then to show that you've got the understanding of, you may have a deep understanding of business continuity, but you've got the cyber awareness, you've got the physical security, so you understand where these professions, and we can use our existing skills from BIAs and all these sort of things to help us on that. And I think there's also opportunity for our organization is to, break down those silos so that, we do talk to each other. I was working with an organization and they had some really heavy duty cyber operation, building a cyber team, building cyber operations, and I said, who's doing your incident management? And I thought the consultants doing the cyber stuff would say, of course we're going to do that, because we're going to have some plans for mitigating these disasters if they happen. But they weren't really interested in that. They wanted to do the kind of the techie bit. So there's an opportunity here for, if you don't understand management, say to cyber people, well, wouldn't you like us to work together so that we can back to back the incident management plan with the cyber plan? We're not telling you techies how to do the cyber bit, but actually you need somebody who's going to say, if someone says, right, we've got some ransomware, you need someone to take that decision. Are you going to pay or are you not going to pay? So there's that opportunity to break down the silos. And there's a sort of fundamental question in organization: who owns risk mitigation? It might be written down in a risk management report, but does actually anybody own that? Does anyone make sure that those risk mitigation measures actually work and also work in conjunction together rather than silos? And I think within that, there's probably a lot of value you can add, and probably maybe some cost you can take on of duplicated effort or not duplicated effort there. And I think the last bit in there to sort of add value is the horizon scanning element of that, is to say, I think that adds a lot of value. You can look out, have a bit of time to look out of what incidents are coming up, what has happened elsewhere in the world, what can happen to us, and then make sure that you push that back into the organization. As I say, whether that's a hurricane in a couple of days or whether that's a new type of cyber threat that's just coming on the horizon, and it'll probably take a year or two to hit you. So that's my sort of talk, a little bit of the benefits of business continuity, which probably a lot of you professionals there, you're familiar with, a little bit of my thoughts on the business continuity skill levels, and taking this reading on the BCI's 2020 plan. So I'm going to leave it over to you for the questions. I think there's just a bit about the PCB's training. So over to you.
Thank you, Charlie, for this excellent and enlightening presentation. We are honored to have you as a speaker. So before we proceed with question and answer, I would like to inform all the attendees that PCB provides training and certification services for ISO 22301 Introduction, Foundation, Lead Implementer, and Lead Auditor. This training is designed to provide you with the required knowledge on how to continue to operate efficiently within a short period. A PCB certificate will demonstrate your dedication in implementing and managing these processes and frameworks, and most importantly, you will be recognized worldwide. For more information, please visit our website, pcb.com/training. So now we will proceed with the questions. The first question was, I believe that the 2022 BCM role depends on the maturity of the continuity culture of the organization. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, because I kind of looked at this and said, well, actually, yeah, as I said, 2012, I see a lot of 2012 organizations out there, or even pre-2012 out there. So yes, it is very dependent on the maturity of the organizations, but I do think there are organizations out there which are running at the sort of, or getting close on to my sort of 2022 model. So I don't know if there's that many out there quite got yet, but I think there's not more than a year or a couple of years away, and people are embracing this resilience and this more sort of holistic view out there. So I think you're absolutely dead right.
Thank you, Charlie, for this answer. Now we will go with the next question. One attendee wrote, who is the right person in the organization to own the BCM process?
Yes, it's always difficult, this one. You can stick them in risk, but risk is, and that's a lot of people seem to get stuck on risk, and they seem to be a bit reactive. It's been to, sort of risk, they spend all day putting their spreadsheets together. So that's one place, but that has quite a nice look across the whole organization, has a view across there. You can put them in IT, but then they're seen as ITDR, so that's normally not a very good place. Operations sometimes I think is actually a good place, because actually if you can report into operations director, you're seen as really at the heart of the business, and that's, I think, you want to be seen rather than being kind of slightly stuck in support services. But to me, as important as where you're put is the clout and of the person you're working for. Because if you get pushed too far down into middle management, you need to have a link into a senior manager who's going to push this. Because if you don't have senior management support, almost regardless of who they are, you're almost dead in the water. You are not going to achieve very much. So I think a little bit where you're positioned, it tells you a little bit about the organization and the different importance things, but you need also that senior manager support, preferably reporting into them, as opposed to, you have 4 managers between you and them.
We will now go with the next question. Another attendee wrote, will the role also be impacted by any new regulations that the business may need to deal with?
Yeah, I think the business continuity manager needs to have their sort of antennas out there for new regulations, for new for new happenings, because if you're a bank or a sort of financial institution, and the Bank of England or your financial conduct organization or whoever your regulators are, they put out new business continuity requirements, then you need to be tied into that. And so you ought to be high profile enough to say, when your compliance people say, oh, I've heard the new regulation, we need to get Charlie and talk about that, because I'm not really, I know what it says, but we need to do something about it. So you need to have the sort of presence and the profile in the organization so people call you in, but you also need to have your antenna out there for knowing, go out to the BCI meetings, go out to other meetings where you're meeting other people. You can get maybe some pre-warning of these things that's going in. But I think it's really important you have your antenna out there to make sure that if there's anything out there, that you're picking it up and you're not going to be sort of caught out.
Thank you, Charlie, for this very interesting answer. We will now go with the next one. I believe that there is some traction within the insurance market for cost savings for organizations holding the 22301 standard. What are your thoughts on promoting BC within the insurance market?
To me, it drives me mad. I'd love the insurance market to give lots and lots of discounts to business continuity, because then I can sell lots more business continuity. You're going to save some money on your insurance. To me, it seems a little bit ludicrous that that you don't get a saving for business continuity. You ought to, if you've done all your stuff properly, you shouldn't. Hopefully, you can see the incidents before, or you've done your risk to stop the incidents happening, or you ought to manage them better so that it costs insurance companies little. I don't know why they don't do it. I suspect a little bit is on the too difficult pile, and it is quite maybe difficult to quantify business continuity, because I'm sure if you got a 10% discount, everyone would tick the box to say, oh, I've got business continuity, and there are different levels. I think ISO is good because you can actually, you either have ISO or you're not. So you're externally certified. So I think the problem is about ISO. For some organizations, ISO qualifications, quality management systems are a little bit of an acquired taste. Some organizations love them, got lots of them. Some of them say, look, it just doesn't add benefit to me. So I think it might be a little bit, I think, if you've got ISO, then you should be able to go to the insurance company and say, look, I've got it. But I think insurance companies personally should make a bit more effort to do that, because it is good for them. But maybe it's just on the, as I said, on their too difficult pile. But I'd love them to do it, but I sell business continuity, so there we are.
Okay, so now we will go with the next question. What are the best softwares for BC monitoring?
What are the best
softwares?
I think software. I think what you have to do with software, my personal feeling on software, even this I've started selling it, is that I think it's quite good to have a level of maturity to understand what you want, how you run your own business continuity, and I think you should then get the vendors in to go and say to them, this is how I like to do it, you show me that your system can meet my requirements. I think that's very important, because otherwise, the system I'm looking at and we resell is brilliantly flexible, you can do most things with it, but there is still a compromise somewhere along the line, because all these systems are written in one particular way, and some have more compromise, some have less compromise. There's always a bit of a compromise on your methodology. So I think if you are, and you're quite a mature organization, then you can look at, say, does this fit the way I like doing it? So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is, if you are maybe saying for a greenfield site you're doing a new bit. We're now doing all our consultancy using, we have the Catalyst software, which is a reseller from Evolution in the States, but we are now doing all our business continuity assignments using the software, regardless whether the client wants to buy it in the end, because we think it gives us better quality and better control of our documents and better control of our analysis. So we use the software for that. So if you are going to greenfield site, you might want to say to somebody, right, actually if you're getting a consultancy, or maybe if you're doing it in-house, you might build the software within the way you want to do it. It's a little bit more difficult if you don't quite know what you want. I think the worst thing is what you can do is say, right, I need business continuity, so we're out there and the best salesman will sell you the best system, and then you try and shoehorn or try and develop it within the software, and actually you don't really understand what you're doing. You just put lots of stuff in the software. And I've seen this lots of times. People, well, these are big organizations where the software's being imposed on the people within the organization, and it's crap in, crap out. And you know, it might look good because you've filled up all those fields with lots of numbers and stuff, but actually what is in there is pretty rubbish because it's meaningless. You know, you've counted numbered tables, but actually do we really want to know the number of tables in emergency? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. So I think you've got to be careful about software. You've got to don't just fall for the most smooth salesman on this and say, oh, he's got bells and whistles and all the rest of it, because I think, you know, you'll be wasting your money. Go in there as a kind of enlightened buyer, and I think, yes, it adds lots of value.
Thank you, Charlie, for this answer. Before we proceed with the next question, can you please change the slide so that Andy can see your email if they need it?
Oh, right, sorry. Oh, sorry,
Okay.
my thing's going. Right. Right, yes, I'll put it in there. There we
Okay,
are,
great.
that.
And I would like to inform all attendees, because of the time limitation, we will answer only 2 more questions, and the remaining ones will be answered through email by Charlie. So we will go with the next one. Would you say that there should be a dedicated BCM team or a group of people, departments, constituting the team as a primary, secondary role?
Yeah, I think you need to have, regardless of whether you're small or large, you need to have a team of people with some expertise who need to drive business continuity, because you know, in small organization, a part-time person, big organizations, you ought to have 1, 2, 3, probably not more than that unless you're massive. But I think you need to have some expertise to do it. And I think the problem is that some organizations kind of do a big project and they have lots of project managers and lots of stuff and do it really, implement it really well, but they don't think about the beyond that, and you have to leave somebody whose job it is to do it. And I think you need someone with some expertise, so that when you need more training, when you need you know, you've bought another company and you need business continuity in there, you need someone with some expertise to be able to develop it in the organization. So I think you need to have some professional people in there. And you know, you can have consultants, yes, but consultants are not going to be there on the day to do the incident. So you need some people with some skills, I think.
Okay, so now we will go with the last question. What are the critical elements of a business continuity policy?
I think policy, as my wife is just busy this for the today, is busy teaching the CBCI course. So I'm just thinking about what we're done. I think the policies, first of all, you need the policy statement signed off by the CEO. You need that statement intent from the top. Yeah, this is important. Our organization does it. You need some key roles and responsibility, especially your sponsor, your BC manager, and your BC coordinator. No doubt about what their roles and responsibilities are and who they are. You need, I think, some standards, how often you update your BIA, how you do your plans. To me, those are the key things in your policy. To me, there needs to be a sort of policy manual. There needs to be an operations manual for business continuity, which is beyond just a simple statement to say, yeah, we're an organization, we love business continuity, signed off by the CEO. So you need to have within that how to work business continuity, how your business continuity management system works. So there's quite a few elements in that, but look at the GPG, there's really good stuff on that and what should be in the policy there.
Once again, thank you, Charlie, for this attractive and informative presentation, and I want to thank all the attendees as well who have joined us today. We hope you enjoyed this webinar. Please be informed that in the upcoming days, we will send you the recorded link, which will be uploaded on our official YouTube channel and in our website, pcb.com. On behalf of PCB and our presenter, thank you for joining us today again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, thanks so much.